All right, Kenman here. Today we are on die project number 26, round 2, fight. Okay, it's Kizer Amicus time. We have had this knife for a while. I'm finally getting it done. If you have not seen part 1, it is right there. If you've seen these before, you know how they go. So we are going to get started. We are getting crazy with some cheese whiz today. Let me tell you, this could be incredible. This could be a disaster. This could be an incredible disaster. Set myself up for success, but we're going for a little resist. See those little spots? I filled them with hot glue in hopes that less dye will take there. You'll be able to see that color will not take as much, therefore it will be lighter in that spot. We're going to go for a light blue today. The thing is hot glue melts in boiling, or melts at like 300 degrees. So I've got this little piece of hot glue that I held in there, and the last test I just did, it kind of seems to hold for a little bit, but we're going to go kind of in and out to kind of give it some hot dye, but then also cool it off in the bath, and then maybe we'll get some good something. Again, this whole project is an experiment. Welcome aboard. Okay, so let's do this. See, it's still a 143 and nothing's in. So I already turned the dye off, so it's going to be cooler than normal. I don't want it to melt that hot glue right away, or if at all. So I'm kind of going in here like this. Gonna give them about 10-15 seconds, and I'm gonna go straight to the rinse because I just want to see what the hot glue did, and I could cool it off and potentially not destroy it. Still solid. Alright, so this water in here is cold, which is, I did that extra on purpose so that I could really neutralize the heat hitting that resisted area with the hot glue, because I wasn't sure what temperature we're at, and if I'm low enough that it's not going to melt, then we should be good to go. And I think we're going to just go for it. And the reality is if the hot glue were to melt in there, it would basically just ruin my dye, get everything everywhere. But what's nice is if I heat it up enough that becomes a liquid, and then I can just go ahead and remove them while it's really hot, and you'll know that the scales don't have any hot glue on them anymore because it's all melted off. This might work, it might not, I don't know. I might not even be hot enough. But also the other reason would be if I'm going light blue, it doesn't need to be as hot because it doesn't need to sit as long and soak as much. We are getting some blue very slowly, but the glue is not moving, which is good, I guess. Alright, so now we know the experiment is happening, and we're just gonna, now we can start not worrying as much. That is no longer hot enough to melt that glue, so it can sit in there. Problem is when it's not hot, it also isn't enough to soak in as fast, and so then the colors don't take as quickly, and you don't have that nice dark color that you're going for. But since we're going for a light kind of blue jean kind of a deal today, I have a feeling this might work out okay. Or we do it like this for a few minutes, and then we crank up the heat, and as that hot glue starts to fall off, that resisted area has been dyed for a less amount of time, or exposed to the dye for a less amount of time, if that makes sense. Therefore, it should be a little lighter. Plus, it's thinner. That's the big issue, is since it's thinner right there, if I didn't use a resist, the dye would be hitting both sides at the same time. Therefore, the thinner areas are going to get darker faster than the thicker areas, if that makes sense. It takes a long time for it to soak all the way through. Over time, it will completely soak in. I've dyed some plastic where it was all on the surface on this side, and after a year you could see it coming through here. So the dye kind of slowly works into the plastic or the material that you're doing, which is an interesting kind of phenomenon. All right, so let's just see where we're at, and now we got to decide if I just need to crank up the heat, because they're getting that blue, but they're not going fast. And we don't want to be here all day. Or do we? All right, I'm putting it glue side up and cranking it. And now we got to pay attention, because if it starts getting hotter, the glue melting point, I think I have a higher melt glue. I think it said like 300, 280 to 350 or something like that. And so once that dye gets above that temp, then that glue is going to start falling off. And like I said, that could make a mess. But if we do it at the right time, we can just peel it off, call it a day. I don't know. This is a weird experiment. Could have just probably just done the whole thing blue, called it, and it might have looked or would look fine. But since this whole process is an experiment, I figured why not throw the curveball. Let's see what happens. It's fun, right? So I do currently have the glue up. So if it were to start to melt, it would definitely kind of stay stable because there's no real current going on. So this is a little piece of hot glue right here. See, it's starting to get a little rubbery. All right. Still solid, but like I said, if I keep doing this back and forth, this is now super cooling it back down, and we can go back in for another round. We're getting somewhere. But once this starts really heating up, that's when we're really gonna be like, oh, and here comes the mess. Oh my God, what a explosion, disaster. Did you guys see Kenman's last dye project? It was ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. Here we are. Anyone going to Blade Show Texas in February? I am going. It's going to be my first Blade Show. I am very excited to go. I've got my tickets. I got my room booked. One of the hotels a couple blocks away. It's going to be fun. If anyone has any tips or comments, tricks, things I should bring, things I should not bring, watch out for, etc. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really, really good time. I'm excited. Okay, so this is a little different than it's usually been. Ooh, kind of has a jello kind of starting to get a little squish to it. See if I can cool these off one more time. And we're not getting as much blue as I was hoping for in the time, because it's not hot enough. But that's what the experiment's all about. So now we're going to just go ahead and crank it up even more. I'm going to let that glue get super soft, start getting ready to fall off, and then we're just going to pull it off, hit it hard for a minute or two if we need to, and then get going. What are we at? 9 minutes. Yowza. Starting to see some steam. That's usually a sign. You start seeing some steam curl around, then you start seeing a couple bubbles, and then you know, like, okay, we are cooking. Oh yeah, really starting to get gummy that time. I think this will be the last one. All right, we're getting a blue though. This is okay. Excellent. Maybe not as dark as I was expecting, but here we are experimenting with dye. Isn't it fun? That's it. This is it. That glue is going to fall off, probably. Hopefully it looked like it would get soft. It doesn't just dissolve. It just kind of starts getting soft, which is perfect because then you can just kind of peel it off in a gummy bear kind of a, you know what I mean? Okay. Sorry I'm not showing you other stuff right now. This is a very tense process here. Oh yeah, that's a mess. There it was. Trying to peel that off when it was warm and it was too warm. There we go. You can see my stringy explosion of disaster. Alright, so now this has got to come off because of what I just did. I thought that would pop off a little easier. Don't cut yourself now. This should. I've done some things with hot glue before where literally you cool it off and you kind of start prying at it and it kind of takes that shape and just comes out in one piece. Of course, in this particular case, I'm going to cut myself. Is that what we want to see? I need something to get under there that's not. Of course, here we are. This is turning into a mess. Did I? So, how about that? Well, looks like I might have to make a edit cut. Find a way to get this out of there now. It doesn't want to come out. And I'm going to need to get something else to figure out some type of tool. Like I said, I've done this in a couple other things that I used to have done. And basically what happened was I was able to get underneath that section and literally the whole piece just came off like a nice chunk because glue doesn't really, especially with when you're just in a cavity, there isn't really anything to hold it there. You know, you're sitting in a spot and that just wants to pry away. Of course, I have to be careful because A, I don't want to cut myself, and B, I don't want to damage the scale. Oh, but see, here we are. Ta-da! That is what was supposed to happen. And unfortunately, not that easy. Got a little excess in there. This video is turning out to not be awesome. Make sure I don't have any dye on my hands. That always is a big issue. Problem is all right, I need to dry off my hands. And I may have to, I'm going to keep going, but it just gets ridiculous. And I'm going to do an edit and we'll cut to when this is all done if I have to do it that way. I'm going to walk. And you are now just catching up after the disastrous removal of my resist. Seemed to work out okay. So it's rebuild time. Let's focus. This is the side that's getting my pocket clip. I have set myself up with a design idea on how to make this work. The barrels here have little detent edges that I can line up so that they do not spin. And since they have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start assembling in a different way. Generally without that detent, or that little detent, that little D spot on the edge. I don't even know if I can get that to zoom in. You see on the far right, it's flat. So that flat is going to sit in a notch in the hole. Therefore, these can't spin. And since they can't spin, it's a little bit easier to screw them down in this way. And if they did, it might be hard. You'd sit there, try to spin it, and they just spin together. I'm not totally cranking it down. I'm just putting it down just enough to get it in position. Next, I'm going to run the pivot. Has a flat spot, which needs to go down, so that when I put this on, it fits just the right way, like so. I am going to also go ahead and take this smaller screw right there and lock this down. Well, at least get it started so it's in place. It's just making my work a little bit easier. Okay, we're going blade. Got it. All right, this button needs to go at the same time as the blade so that the blade can click into it like so. Excellent. Next up, we have this. Isn't that nice? Button needs a spring. We have a cover. Click. Slick. Let's get the pivot started. There we go. Like I said, you gotta not tighten the whole thing down. You want to be careful when you put it back together so you keep the blade centered. So you want to tighten it all down, kind of pay attention to that. So I'm not tightening everything really tight yet. I'm just kind of getting stuff in, like I said, getting it prepped, and then we'll crank it all down and try to keep that blade nice and centered. I like the way this blue looks. The dye process, the resist part might not have worked so well, but end of the day, we're going to have an Amicus that has a nice look to it. And I'm pretty happy. It's always something. Like I said, as an artist, I'm used to some failures and some trials and not knowing exactly what's going to happen when you're just trying some exciting stuff. And so I don't mind. It doesn't really stress me out too much. Okay, let's tighten this all down. I usually like to tighten the blade down. Kicks it a little bit that way. But then we'll loosen it up once we get everything else tightened down. And it should be pretty good. These are all T6s. You got to be careful with those T6s. You don't want to bump them. You can strip out a thread or your bit really easily. So you want to be very cautious when you're tightening them down at the end there, that they don't jump like that. Yeah, that's true. The clip, I like to go back and forth a couple times. It seems that when they're right next to each other, you get one tight and it loosens the other one just a little bit. Okay. Let's loosen that pivot just a little. Blade is centered. Feels a little tight. Okay. Did it. All right. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, 35 minutes. Boom. Action still the same. Centered nicely. Flips out perfect. Buttons out. I'm using my right hand here. Let's get to the good one. Excellent. Kizer Amicus, complete. Okay, can we see through it at all? If I go like that and get the light going in there. Barely. It's not really lighter there at all. But it does have a nice light tone. You can see it's a little bit darker right there. That's what would have happened. If I hadn't put that completely there, it was a thin spot like that. It would have definitely been darker in those areas. And it would have still been kind of a two-tone. That might have looked even cooler. Who knows? This is what we learn. This is what happens when you experiment. You get to have some fun. But you know what? At the end of the day, Amicus still works great. Looks good with the blue. I'm happy about it. Comment below, what do you think? All right, well, that's going to be it for today. If you enjoy what you see, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you would like to see more. It helps me out. I really appreciate it. More dies coming. More titanium anodizing. We got a lot more custom stuff going on, unboxings. 2024 is almost here. Going to be a great year. Excited to get going. Stay sharp. We'll see you soon.